Good morning to Nandal. We are now on the fifth lecture. We will also have today one more period. So in these two periods that we are going to now learn about cornering properties of tires. So in the last class, we looked at the tire, how can we understand the generation of longitudinal force or the tractive force or tractive effort or braking at the contact patch during tire road interaction with a basic theory proposed by Julian and the model called the Julian's model. So wherein we consider the tire to be an elastic band and some which is under tension equivalent to that of inflation pressure of a real-time tire, and we were able to apply our mechanics of materials approach and able to follow how could you get the tractive effort. And what is that we essentially understood is this tractive effort developed is primarily depends on an important phenomena called slip, longitudinal slip. So therein we defined also an important stiffness called longitudinal stiffness. Longitudinal slip stiffness, right? So and so on. This is what we have seen in the last class. So we are going to look at today the cornering properties of tires. So similarly, we would also look at the ride properties of tire. So these three aspects are essentially to be fulfilled by the tires. That's what in our introduction class we looked at. So we will have maybe another 4 lectures also for the first module, and then we will get into longitudinal dynamics of our passenger car. So with that brief note, I'm going to share my slide and start today's class. Hope all of you are able to see the screen. So in the last class, essentially, we were looking at Julian's model, wherein we derived this tractive effort as function of longitudinal slip. Importantly, we looked at this model to be a model which is simplified model. Why? Because we are not considered an important element, what is called this lambda, that's given by the length of the tire which is entering the contact patch just before the contact patch is under elastic deformation. So the elastic deformation can be of two kinds. One can be under compression, another one can be under stretch. So when it will be under compression, whenever there is a driving torque is applied on the tire wheel assembly, there is a proportional tractive effort is developed. At that time, the elastic deformation of the tread representation would be under compression, and this compressive strain is constant in the contact patch is what is importantly that we consider when there is no sliding that takes place, right, in the contact patch. So and also this lambda is quite cumbersome to find out. It involves an tedious experiment and so on. So the same Julian's model we have modified and called as a simplified model. That's what we were looking at in the last period. So what has happened? The critical value of tractive effort, which represent a point A in our graph, has been now replaced by the value μpw by 2. And similarly, the characteristic length, what we have defined, wherein you will see this lambda will disappear. So with that, we were looking at the simplified model. So neglecting this lambda, the Julian's model has been reduced like that. So we had the similar approach of no sliding first considered, so that the entire contact patch could represent OA in this graph, and corresponding to the critical slip value, longitudinal slip, what is that as μpw by 2? That would be only half, that would be the available potential due to interaction or extracted. But it is expected that your tire has to go to this maximum available tractive force to be developed, which is limited by μp times w. So this μp times w to achieve is what is we require further the consideration of characteristic length and then the characteristic length is smaller than that of the contact patch length, then there is an initiation of sliding that at the rear of the contact takes place, and so on, that we have discussed the physics, what is behind this phenomena, and we were comfortably able to derive the expression that would account also from point A to B. And if any increase of I beyond this I max corresponding to point B would make your tire to slide completely in arbitrary direction, that would lead to an unstable state of your tire motion. That's what we were looking at it clearly, and then we were able to derive this Julien's tire model, considering both region adhesion as well as sliding region, and we were able to derive this expression. So this is what is your tractive effort in a simplified model that we have seen. And then further we have defined an important definition called the skid. So what is skid? Skid is whenever there is braking torque is applied, whenever there is a braking torque is applied. So braking, if this is my forward direction initially, the braking torque will be opposite. So this is braking torque is applied. You see there is a force that would be developed in the opposite to this, which is braking effort. And of course, you'll have this free body diagram. You'll have this normal, and the normal would be always in front of your contact patch center. This is the contact patch center. So you have this Fx. So this Fx to derive, we've defined this skid, where you see the in front of the contact patch, the portion of the thread entering the contact patch is under stretch. This is under stretch. So that would make an equivalent translatory motion more than that of which would be achieved during free rolling condition, and that defines exactly what is skid. That's why we have V is greater than R omega. So V minus R omega by V into 100 will give you skid in percentage. And we were able to derive and also look at the relationship between I and IS. And this has helped us to just to fix our further formulas for braking effort and skid, considering what we have got it for tractive effort and slip. So replace I by IS by 1 minus IS. And CS you defined as this, in this formula CI you replace by CS. So you are able to get what is the critical value corresponding to at point A, what is IS, and what is the corresponding critical FXC value by substituting in this formula. This further I have written down after the class and updated for you to follow. So the contact, the critical value of Fx in case of braking is CS into CS you replace CI, you replace by CS, and I you replace by this, and substitute the ISC value, and then you would be able to derive this expression, which is going to be equal to half the potential maximum available Vp times W by 2. That's equation 1.35. Therefore, region beyond point A in the graph, what is that condition? Your skid, the skid value, this should be greater than a skid corresponding to this critical value. So how do you get that? You get that simply by considering the region which is going to be initiating sliding from the rear. So you whatever the expression that you have derived for traction, that is the equation just now you have seen, you replace here again Ci by Cs, I by Is by 1 minus Is, you get this expression. One can also start all from the beginning, the derivation for braking and skid, similar to what we were doing it for this way, considering a simplified model, wherein I consider here tractive effort. So you can also consider this to be braking, and you can have a skid straight away, and you would end up with the same expression. So this is what we were doing in the last period, and we are going to look at today an important topic called cornering properties of tire. So this is lecture number 5. Today it is 15/2/2021. So we're going to look at cornering proper of tires. So what does that comes in mind when you say cornering properties of tire? So like you have seen now, longitudinal slip and skid, whenever you have to understand the cornering properties of tire, what is to come in your mind is a slip angle. Like how slip is necessary for generation of tractive effort, slip angle is necessary for generation of cornering force. So we are going to look at, whenever I say cornering properties, we look at the slip angle and associated cornering force. And we're going to look at slip angle and an associated couple called aligning torque. Aligning torque, or this is called self-aligning torque. And also we are going to look at, importantly, what is also going to contribute for the cornering properties in another angle called the camber angle. Camber angle and the associated camber thrust or camber torque. So these are should come into our mind. We are going to look at how are they going to vary, and also we are going to characterize this cornering property by modeling the tire in order to mathematically represent, like we represented tractive effort as function of slip. We will also derive the expression for cornering force. So that's what is the idea of today's lectures. One period now and one more period after this. So let's go ahead with understanding first what is the slip angle. So when I say the slip angle, you should consider that the tire is constrained to go in a straight line. That means you see that tire or wheel plane. Wheel plane is the one which takes the entire tire through the axis of the tire. And if the wheel plane is perpendicular to the ground, and the wheel is constrained to go straight. That's what you would imagine. So let's just look at a section of the tire in order to follow this, what I'm going to explain you. So that's going to be with this diagram. I'm going to explain. This is the rim. So we know over this we have your tire. So just to draw this, you could also have taken it from the textbook straight away. But when you develop this diagram, we will follow what are these wheel plane all nicely. So that one what I draw now is a wheel plane. If this wheel plane is straight, then you see this wheel is constrained to go in a straight. So there is no camber angle. There is no camber. So here we say camber angle is 0. Let me put this on there. Camber angle gamma is 0. Right? Camber angle is what? It's an inclination of the wheel plane to the vertical plane that is coming from the ground. But now that is 0. So when it is 0, I look at only the development of slip angle. And for that, I just draw the section of the tire and rim assembly. And this is the one which is not in contact with the ground. The other portion which is in contact with the ground will be now appearing like that. So look at that. Whenever there is a side force, when there is no side force acting on this rim, tire wheel assembly, it is going to be symmetrical here, and you'll have this wheel plane like this. But what does happen when there is a side force acting here? So let me put a side force here. That's going to push this Fs. So that may be caused due to wind blow from the side when you drive the vehicle. So imagine that this tire wheel assembly is pushed towards this direction. So there is a side force. Then what would happen to the contact patch? The contact patch here, which is going to be symmetrical about this line, would be now slightly distorted. That is due to the elastic lateral elasticity property of the tire. So the tire is not only having elastic property in the direction. That's why we were looking at initially 3 stiffnesses, right? So you have also lateral elasticity property of the tire would make the tire to go something like this. So this is the bead. So it is going to go somewhat like this. So your contact patch would come here like this. So this is the contact patch. So it is not symmetrical now. So if I have to draw the symmetry line at distorted one, like this it is. So this is center of the contact patch shifted on this side. So when this is applied. So when I see the same in the top view, how is it going to be appearing? It's going to be appearing as this. So if this is my top view tire of the dimension, and it's going to be somewhat like this. So this is what is my tread, and these two are my side walls, and I have not here drawn the hidden rim, but instead I'm going to show the contact patch. If this is not subjected to FZ, my contact patch would have been a rectangular contact patch, which is hidden, and this is my axis of the tire. So it will be like this, but this contact patch now is going to be shifted, so that's going to be like this. So this portion of the tire would come like this. So my entire contact patch is being shifted to this way in the ground like this. So when this side force is applied, what would happen usually? You see that there will be a force. So there is a side force here in the center of the wheel, and that would manifest the resistive force or the generation of lateral force at the contact patch, which would normally be not a collinear force, which would act behind this at a distance. So that force developed is what is your side force Fy due to slip angle. So why this slip angle comes, that you'll understand in a while. So this distance is what is called TP, what is called a pneumatic trail. Pneumatic trail. So you understand that the side force which is acting at the center of this would be transferred there down. So that process of transfer of this to the contact patch would manifest not only to develop this, also to develop a couple against this, and that couple is what is self-aligning torque, right? So we'll see. So what will happen, because of this contact patch now is distorted in lateral direction due to its elastic nature, and you see the wheel travel direction is not straight. Instead, it will be at an angle to this, and this angle is what we call it as slip angle alpha. This angle is what we call it as slip angle alpha, and this point is center of contact patch, and you see this is what is your forward direction OA. So this is wheel travel direction. So how do I define? So your wheel plane is this is your wheel plane, and the wheel plane now is distorted. The contact patch, because of the distortion, deformed one. The path travel, wheel travel path. This is wheel travel path at an angle alpha. So you see that's an angle called a slip angle. This is what is called a slip angle. So this all are happening is mainly because of the lateral elasticity property of the tire, which should be offered by this pneumatic tire. That's why they are popular in used and they are used in automotive application on road vehicles. So now see what is that you have to see understand here is this force Fy alpha developed. How does it vary with the slip angle? How does it vary with the slip angle? So if I take slip angle, alpha here and my Fy alpha. So you see that it will be varying in this direction gradually, and it will be asymptotic, or it will reach its maximum value possible and limited by road adhesion limit. Road adhesion. Road adhesion limit. That's limited by road adhesion limit mu p that we have seen, right? And you see that some typical value, if I take this of 100 Newton, sorry, 1000 Newton and say 2000 Newton and so on for a chosen passenger car tire, then the slip angle can be maximum achievable maybe at 18 degrees. So let's say this is for 8, 12, 60 degree and so on, just like that for an example. So this whatever that I have drawn here is for bias tire. So you see that the slope is gradually changing. Whereas if I look at the same variation of my Fy alpha for a slip angle, with respect to slip angle for a radial tire, I'll have some steep value that goes like this. So this is for radial tire. So radial tire, if you look at the slope is greater compared to that of this slope. So what is the slope defines dou Fy alpha by dou alpha. Why dou I put it? Because you can also have a camber angle, but we consider camber for the condition now is 0, and then it's only slip angle present. So this at alpha equals 0, if I draw the slope here lines, that slope is what is defining an important property of the tire called cornering stiffness of the tire. Cornering stiffness of the tire. Right. So let me call this equation as 1.37. I just follow the numbers as it is available in the textbook. And the unit of this will be given by normally kilonewton or Newton per degrees. Per degree of slip angle, what is the value? Is what is your cornering stiffness of the tire. And you see this is slope when alpha is equal to 0. So this is a linear value that I consider. But that same slope is not, there's a slope here, there's a slope here. So here you see the slope for radial tire is more than the bias tire. So it has got more cornering stiffness compared to that of bias tire. And this is also a main reason why bias tires are used in two-wheel vehicles like motorbikes, is because the variation of your Fy alpha is gradual with an increase of slip, so that during cornering the rider could exercise comfortably in order to maintain the stability during cornering. So that's an advantage reason also why two-wheel vehicles like motorcycles are still are using bias tires instead of radial tires. Of course, nowadays motorcycles with radial tires, which are sporty two-wheelers are come. That's all you can update, right? So with that, you see an important definition of this. Let's go ahead with looking at what is the next to self-aligning torque. So self-aligning torque is because of this pneumatic trail. So the pneumatic trail times Fy alpha is what is my self-aligning torque. So M is that is what is going to be given by Fy alpha times Tp. So this is what is your self-aligning torque. I don't number it as there is not numbered as well in the textbook. So this is what is your self-aligning torque. Why it's called self-aligning torque is because the torque which is now acting would make the wheel plane to get aligned with the wheel direction. Or you can say that this is when there is a side force acting on the wheel. But when you are taking a turn of your vehicle in a corner, So there is a centrifugal force outward, or you call it a centripetal force necessary to be generated to hold the direction on the curve. So at that time, that centripetal force acting on the curvature side would be with the TP, and that would try to generate a self-aligning torque. As you negotiate a turn, that would try to make your wheel plane to align in the wheel travel direction or in the forward direction, and that's why it is called self-aligning torque, right? So you could experience that when you drive your vehicle, you see that you do steering on the right and to take a right turn, and you see when you leave the steering wheel, automatically you feel your steering comes back. That's essentially because of this self-aligning torque, which is generated at the tire rod interaction because of the lateral force generated for cornering is at an offset distance TP called a pneumatic trail from the center of the contact patch towards the rear side of the contact patch, not in the forward side. Remember that, right? So this is what is self-aligning torque. Now, like we have looked at how the variation of this is there, we will also look at what is the variation of self-aligning torque with the slip angle. Before that, let me also look at what is the influence of this Fy alpha as function of load. If you look at, so if I take load on this axis and Fy alpha here, so for a given slip angle, you see that would be increasing and goes like this for a given slip angle. So that means whatever that I plot now is all for a given slip angle. Say this is 2 degrees, 4 degrees, 6 degrees, and so on. It goes something like that. Say 10 degrees. So for the given slip angle, Fy alpha increases as the load increases for the given inflation pressure. What would happen if the load increases? Why is it happening? If the load increases, inflation pressure is not changing, your contact patch is increases. The length of the contact patch increases. As the length of the contact patch increases, your resultant Fy alpha generated to balance this side force would increase, and also that would be increasing the pneumatic trail. That's the reason why you have your Fy alpha increases, right? And also you see that you would have your self-aligning torque increases, but that is not going to increase ever. It is going to increase and fall down again. So that is what we will see in a while. Also, one more important aspect that you see that cornering force and slip angle, before we look at self-aligning torque variation, is very important that if we consider a chosen tire, if I consider chosen tire, and here I'm going to have my normal load Fz, and I'm going to have here Fy. The variation of Fy and the normal load would be like this. It's non-linear. So if I take any point here for a chosen single tire, if this is my normal load on which I will have my corresponding lateral force developed given by Fy. This is what for, it is for a given slip angle. Given slip angle. Given slip angle. So since this variation is non-linear, you see that when I have a pair of wheels on a cross beam of my axle in a vehicle, so what would happen during cornering? There is a load transfer in the lateral direction. So the load transfer takes place from inner side to the outer side of the wheel. So I have here a beam axle. One axle I'm just showing for a vehicle. When I take a turn, and the load transfer from inner side to the outer side that takes place, right? So this is my vehicle, top view. Consider the load transfer from inner side to outer side. So the normal load on the outer wheel is more than that of inner wheel. So that would make normal load inside reduces. So let me call that as Fzi, and the outer wheel increases by Fz naught. So then what would happen? I'll have my corresponding value here, which would be generated is Fy I, and this would be Fy naught. So what is that you understand? If I have a single wheel and whatever the variation of Fi is given by this graph, if I have two wheels on this kind of application in an axle, then what would happen? I would have now the requirement of Fi. Suppose in one axle, if I look at here Fi, I, and here I have Fi naught. So the sum will be Fi I plus Fy naught required by two tires is less than 2Fy. So if I have two tires, it is supposed to be 2Fy, but it would be lesser than that because of this nonlinear variation. So this sum will be lesser than that. This is the reduction. So this is the reduction. And this reduction for the chosen slip angle cannot meet what is the required 2Fi. So what is the required lateral force? Required lateral force is 2Fy, but which is less than Fyi plus Fy naught because of the variation is nonlinear. So in such situation, your tire is intelligent and it would try to increase its slip angle so that it will be trying to match the required Fi. That's why it is just for a chosen slip angle. But when you start driving, when you start steering to a corner, what would happen? Your Fy is generated because of increase in slip angle. So it's not a one slip angle, it is keep increasing the slip angle, and that's what you see that what is the important property that the tire holds to generate your lateral force. So we will see this all again more detail. So here only we look at that what's happening on the tire contact, but when we are going to look at role of your vehicle and so on in your lateral dynamics, at that time you see that this is again to be critically understood this point. So with this understanding, let's again look at another important definition. What is that? Is for this. So I just have written down an equation earlier. What is that equation? Is to define your cornering stiffness. Next equation I'm going to write the camber and camber thrust. So before that, let's look at how this MZ is going to vary with the slip angle. So this MZ is going to vary with the slip angle in this fashion. So it's going to increase for a while and then it's going to reduce and it's going to be 0 and then it may go like this. So you will have there is a maximum value of MZ, and why this is decreasing is because of the reason that as you increase the slip angle, you see that it's limited by road adhesion coefficient. So it would go to this maximum value maybe till that limited slip angle. After that, the increase of slip angle would make the pneumatic trail reduction. So the pneumatic trail reduction would again cause this to reduce, and that comes like this. So this is what is the variation of MZ as function of slip angle, right? So with that, let's look at now important. You also, meanwhile, you also see that the cornering coefficient defined. So what is cornering coefficient? That's to benchmark, that's to evaluate the effect of normal load. So another important term called cornering coefficient. Like you look at the braking coefficient last class, cornering coefficient. So what is cornering coefficient? So that is defined as cornering stiffness per unit normal load. Cornering stiffness as per unit normal load. So this definition helps us to look at, if I take the nominal load percentage on this, nominal load percentage here on x-axis, my this coefficient which is given by unit 1 by degree, because Newton per degree is what is cornering stiffness. I divide that by normal load, so I get 1 by degree. So I will have this variation goes like this. So that's what you have to see. Like that, also you have an influence of inflation pressure to see. Again, cornering coefficient is used. So you would see that this cornering coefficient would increase as function of inflation pressure, IP, 1 by degrees. Would be like this. So for a radial tire, it would be more compared to the bias tire. So this is bias tire. This is a radial tire. We also seen another belted bias tire that would have a value in between. So this cornering coefficient is to compare the performance of different tires during cornering. So that is what you would see in industrial term or in literature, that cornering coefficient is more, the cornering property of tire is good. So that's why radial tires are better in cornering compared to that of bias tire in four wheels or two axle vehicles. Whereas two wheels vehicle like passenger motorbike, this is preferred and so on. So this is all what is that we look at first in hand to understand cornering properties of tire with the development of lateral force and self-aligning torque. We also look at now on another important definition or the geometrical property called camber and camber thrust. And camber thrust. So camber and camber thrust to look at again, let me see now the same tire wheel assembly. Instead of wheel plane to be vertical, I'm going to look at an angle to the vertical plane. So if this is my vertical plane drawn to the ground, this is ground, this is the vertical plane. My tire is going to be now like this with some cambered angle, and I am exaggerated diagram I'm drawing. The angle what with I'm drawing is not actually going to be present in your vehicle. That would be very small angle, maybe half a degree to 1 degree for a passenger car tire. But I have exaggerated one, I am drawing it here. So this angle, so this is your wheel plane. This is your wheel plane. And this is your vertical plane. So this angle is what is camber angle, called by the letter gamma. And you see that I have drawn it for a free rolling tire. So if I draw the axis of this is exaggerated, this axis of this, there is an intersection with this point. That point O is what is theoretical center of rotation of cambered wheel. This is theoretical center of rotation. Rotation of the cambered wheel. Right, it is on the ground. But in reality, this angle is present in the wheel, but it is constrained to go in straight, not about this. So it is not going to roll. It is a free rolling, free wheel. When it is a free wheel, and with this camber angle, it will be rotating or revolving about this point O. But in reality, in application of vehicle, this is now constrained to go in a straight path. So this point O would be at an infinite distance, right? So that's what you would understand. And why this camber angle? What is the basic need? This is a design angle provided deliberately in order to minimize two aspects. One is bearing pressure. One is to hold the wheel, increase the bearing pressure of this assembly with the hub. Another one is to reduce the offset distance, called the kingpin offset distance. So what is kingpin offset distance? So closer to this, you would see that column coming from the steering wheel assembly in a vehicle. And that steering column inclination to the vertical is what is called the kingpin inclination. So let's just draw that axis. So this is steering column axis, and its vertical, whatever is there, is called a kingpin inclination. Pin inclination. And this is what is called the kingpin offset. Kingpin offset. So this is to reduce, you have this camber angle given. And this camber angle given for the design requirement would develop a force called lateral force given by Fy and denoted by Fi gamma because it's by camber. So in this case, let me assume alpha is 0. That's important. Like in the previous case, we looked at gamma 0 and we looked at it. Now alpha is 0. You have this. So now this Fy gamma is what is called camber thrust. Here I have Fy alpha called cornering force. I would call that as a camber thrust. And this camber thrust is in collinear with it is in direction with the Fi alpha. But if you look at interestingly, this Fi alpha would develop in front of the contact patch, And you see this camber thrust is very small for the same operating condition. If that one, the one which could be developed by slip angle, maybe 1/5 to 1/10 of the value. So you would have the effect of this is already taken care along with your lateral force due to slip angle. And here again we are going to define an important stiffness called camber stiffness, C gamma, and that would be given by dou F Y gamma by dou gamma when gamma value is considered to be 0. So when I say this, like a slip angle variation, gamma angle variation, Fi gamma variation with camber also is going to be linear for some time and then non-linear. And you draw a slope at gamma 0, you would have a definition of this, which is called a camber stiffness. This is called camber stiffness. And this value is what I was telling, is going to be 1/5, 1/10 to 1/5, 1/10 to 1/5 for the same operating condition. Same operating condition. So let me call this equation to be equation 1.38. So we have understood importantly two stiffness. One is cornering stiffness, another one is camber stiffness. So if we have this, what is my total lateral force that would be available in the contact patch if I have to account both the angles are present, right? So what would be that? So that's going to be Fy, that's equal to Fy alpha plus or minus Fy gamma. Fi alpha plus or minus Fi gamma. So when the side force is applied, you had the direction of that. See, this plus or minus is coming because of the direction of your camber, can be negative or positive camber. Accordingly, this would be changing. So if both are of same direction, you would get added. If it is of opposite direction, it would be subtracted. So this equation is 1.39, and you have the substitution of this into this. That's going to be C alpha times alpha plus or minus C gamma times gamma, and this is 1.40 equation number. So this is how you get your lateral force, which is also accounting the camber thrust, right? So with that, now I will stop this lecture. And what is that next period that we are going to do? Maybe we'll have a half an hour lecture. We are going to understand characterizing this lateral force, characterization of this lateral force. So we are going to derive a mathematical model for this lateral force generation, like the one which we have seen for longitudinal force. With that, let me just stop now this recording, and then again after 5 minutes we'll resume back.